in the newsroom. It's time for The World This Week, 7 days, 4 Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour. The World This Week in partnership with the International Herald Tribune. Joining us this week, France 24 Foreign Affairs editor Annette Young. How are you?
Hello, good evening.
Also with us, didn't I see you upstairs, by the way?
I've been everywhere.
Okay. With us as well, the new kid on the block, we can call him, I guess, Ron Linker, who, until what you say, 8 weeks ago, you were the Washington correspondent for Dutch public broadcaster NOS, and now you're the Paris one.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the French capital. Welcome as well, always, to Régis Le Sommier of Paris Match, the preeminent news weekly. This week on the cover, Jackie Kennedy.
Of course.
Jackie.
Yeah, big story.
Big story. And let's also welcome Franco-Syrian photojournalist Amar Abed Rabo, who's just back from 3 weeks in Tripoli. We'll get to that in a moment. We want to thank you for weighing in throughout the week on the conversation on the World This Week's Facebook page. You can also follow us and our guests on Twitter, our handle here at FrancoisF24. Let's begin with what was another humdrum week for Europe's finances. Let's see, there was a $2 billion rogue trading scandal, a downgrade on French banks, public brainstormings on what to do when Greece defaults. And then, of course, there were the markets themselves. First, plummeting to 26-month lows before surging as 5 central banks joined forces to pump dollars into the system. We must issue a warning to the faint of heart. You might want to turn away as we show you the graph of the roller coaster chart that is the Paris stock market over the past month. And you see it going up and down and up and down. Régis Le Sommier, is it bankers or politicians that have fallen asleep at the wheel?
I think, it's very grave as a situation, and we are all aware of that. But I would say that bankers like to tell you that it's the end of the world tomorrow. And they're always in that mood. And what we've seen over the week is, of course, it's serious. I mean, Greece bailout or delay in bailout is really serious. We're all wondering about our own economy. We're all wondering about the financial world and where we're going. But it's always, this sense of danger, this sense of going up and down. It's always the case, and so I wouldn't say let's, but I would let's pause a little bit and see where we're heading.
All right, perhaps we're being a little bit over pessimistic. Got to say, if you think European bankers like to sound the alarm, over in the U.S. they take a pretty dim view towards our common currency. We could show you, for instance, an opinion piece that really shares the values of a lot of people over there. This by Alan Meltzer in the Wall Street Journal. Leave euro to the pigs, he argues, saying that there should be 2 currency unions inside the euro, one for virtuous northerners and the other for the likes of Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain. That column, by the way, sparking a spattering of irony on Twitter. Our own France 24 producer Alex Pigman, who's on sabbatical, telling us to ask the Swiss, who last week, by the way, bought euros to bring down the inflated value of their franc, while Sonia goes further, saying, what about 27 eurozones instead of 1? A line that was also taken by sometimes guest on this show, Stefan de Vries of RTL Dutch radio. Ron Linker, is it the end of the euro as we know it?
Well, there's always been discussion about Europe with 2 velocities, right? With the northern countries and the southern countries. So maybe what we're seeing today could be that scenario playing out, that in the end we will have 2 eurozones with their own limits of the euro with which they can fluctuate. But it's very telling that the Americans take this very seriously, as we've seen U.S. Secretary Timothy Geithner coming over to Europe 2 times now to tell us that we really have to get our act together here in Europe, because they're not going to do it for us. That, of course, you had many reactions in Europe saying, well, what are the Americans interfering with our business with? But it was telling for me that he would come over here and discuss these issues and tell the Europeans, well, get your act together.
And it's an issue that has everyone sort of reworking the playbook. Here's what one lead editorial, for instance, says. Instead of austerity and pretense, a credible rescue should start with growth and where it is unavoidable, a serious restructuring of public debt. Now, the publication who says it is neither Socialist Workers Weekly or Mother Jones. It's The Economist, whose front cover states how to save the euro, a modest ambition there. The Economist, by the way, particularly hard on Germany's chancellor, in effect saying that backing the likes of Greece may be unpopular back home, but Angela Merkel must tell voters that letting the euro fail would be much worse. Merkel, who continues to reject the idea of pooling the debt burden with the so-called Eurobonds.
I have put forward my solution, and I will make absolutely clear to the government which solution I am not in favour of. And that is the pooling of the debt burden, in the hope that everything is going to get better. There won't be any Eurobonds, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, hearty cheers at the end of that, Annette Young.
Yeah,
And we've had the feeling that all along throughout this whole drama, the Germans say one thing and then have to kind of go back on it later.
Yeah, it's called pandering to your domestic audience, isn't it? And that's the problem with all of these political leaders, and this is why the Americans are getting so angry at the Europeans. But, you know, maybe the time has come for that dreaded concept, the United States of Europe. Again, I'd like to buy the T-shirt. So I think, you know, it requires clear strategic forward thinking. Now, the problem is we haven't seen that from the European leaders. The Economist has mapped out a very straightforward 4-point guide on how to do it, guys. And, you know, one of them, of course, is dealing with the Eurobonds issue, sort of ramping up the European Parliament, taking responsibility, getting to the point that even those countries which are not Eurozone members as such, or who use the euro, such as Sweden and so on, having, you know, making them feel like they're on the outer as opposed to being a part of the inner core. So yes, I think it's a sad reflection of a lack of clear thinking on the part of Europe's politicians.
Now, if Europe's leaders need a morale boost, may we suggest a jaunt to scenic Libya?
Vive Benghazi! Vive la Libye! Vive l'amitié entre la France et la Libye!
Thursday in Benghazi for the French president. The French president there in the company of the head of the National Transitional Council. And he wasn't alone, by the way. As you can see, there's the British Prime Minister, David Cameron. And further over, the French Foreign Minister. And this is the part that Annette Young liked in particular coming up.
Yes, this is coming up very shortly. We're going to see William Hague. Now, William Hague is renowned for his effusive, over-sentimental style, receiving this pin on his lip. Oh, yes, put your fist up. Yes, I can do it. Yes, I can. Yes, I do feel sorry. There's nothing like a British gentleman like William Hague being caught up in all that euphoria.
Amra, let me ask you, what was your reaction when you saw those scenes in Benghazi?
Of course, I mean, for Sarkozy, it's probably the place where he got a much better election than in France, you know. But once you have said that, what is not really nice, and I feel pity for the whole circus and the whole euphoria, is that they probably got like a race to be there before Erdogan and to get
the Turkish Prime Minister.
Yeah, the Turkish Prime Minister, the cameras, the whole thing. Probably if they waited a few weeks or a few months, I don't know. I mean, it's very young still. We don't know where Gaddafi is, and it's. But well, the image of Hague and the pin and the whole thing and the French flags in street probably is irresistible. I can tell.
Régis Sommier, did the French and British leaders go there too soon? After all, Gaddafi's still at large.
Well,
we have an experience in the past with someone saying mission accomplished a little too soon.
It's true, but you know, history can repeat itself, of course, and we should, you know, be very careful with Libya. Not everything is over, and far from being over. There's still a lot of things that are, and there's still some fighting going on as we speak right now. So I think both leaders needed a moral boost. They wanted to capitalize on this good news for them.
They wanted to feel the love.
Of course, and of course, and I would say for Nicolas Sarkozy, he wanted to catch the media attention so that the debate that was held by the socialist candidate would be a little, overshadowed by his own performance in Libya. So, but
it did the best audience yesterday, on French TV,
that's
which
true.
is amazing.
So it didn't quite work, but also we must say to both Sarkozy and Cameron that never any intervention in another country, whether it's successful or not. I mean, look at Churchill or George Bush's father won an election at home. And as we all know, Clinton said once famously, it's the economy.
There was also the issue of David Cameron promising aid during his press conference that he gave back in Tripoli, where there was also a hero's welcome, aid and help in trying to track down Libya's ousted leader.
Thank you, Sarkozy.
All right, there's scenes in the hospital where you saw David Cameron, where he promised to take back 50 of the toughest cases from that hospital, those most badly injured, to Britain for treatment. And he also offered this help going forward.
But let us be clear, this is not finished. This is not done. This is not over. There are still parts of Libya that are under Gaddafi's control. Gaddafi is still at large, and we must make sure this work is completed. We must keep on with the NATO mission until civilians are all protected and until this work is finished. We will help you to find Gaddafi and to bring him to justice.
We will help you to find Gaddafi. Does that sound like he's perhaps playing a little bit with that UN mandate there, Ron?
I think it's not implied in the UN mandate to actually help actively locating where Gaddafi is. On the other hand, my country, the Netherlands, would be very glad to have him in The Hague to judge him with the International Criminal Court. It's been an issue with the Netherlands and the new Libyan government, so to speak. They want to have a trial for Gaddafi in their own country, whereas the Dutch argue that he should be tried in The Hague. And that's one of the issues that the Netherlands has with the Libyan rebels. Overall, they support it. They unfroze, so to speak, the assets that were in the Netherlands for a big part. But there's also doubt about who are these guys? Can we trust them? Why are we handing over that amount of money? And again, the same question, isn't this all too early?
Amr Abed Rabo, comment on that, on who the NTC is.
I mean, I agree. It's we don't know them very well. A lot of them have been with Gaddafi until very soon. I mean, very recently. So it's quite a dilemma. I mean, you have the people who are seen in Europe. You have those that we don't see in Europe who are there. Like last week, there was a major speech on the Green Square or Martyr Square by Abdel Hakim Belhaj, who used to be one of Bin Laden companions, and he has much more charisma than Mustafa Abdel Jalil or Mr. Jibril that we know in Europe. So. Of course, like every revolution, probably there will be later one guy or two guys who would be, how you say that? I mean, better or stronger or more popular than the others. Maybe without elections, maybe before the elections. I mean, for the moment, it's very unclear, and I understand the Dutch are being cautious.
It's a fractious movement, though, isn't it? I mean, the problem is, as you pointed out, you've got those who favour a secular liberal approach, and most of them do, unfortunately, seem to be associated with the previous regime, versus those who are more Islamist. And you've got, is it Salabi, the noted Islamic scholar? I mean, do you see them ever forming some sort of reconciliation or such, or splintering instead, once they do locate Gaddafi? Because that's the key thing, isn't it? Because at the moment it's finding Gaddafi which is holding all these groups together.
Absolutely. And they've been, all of them are gathered by this, only by being anti-Gaddafi. So once he's maybe in The Hague or somewhere else, what is going to unite them again? I don't know. It's very unclear for the moment. What is really surprising is that the Libyans are not that in favor of an Islamic state. You know, they're not that much. They
However,
have
the Islamic law will be at the base of the constitution.
yes, of course. A lot of them talk about Islamic law, and unfortunately, like what happened in Iraq a few years ago, the idea of the secular state is now linked to dictatorship. You know, they think that if you are secular, if you are against God, if you're laïc, laicist, then secular, then you're against. Then you're linked to the dictatorship,
So you've got,
which is
you've
not.
got a choice, which is to go down the path of going like the way in which Turkey has, which is, you know, democratic Islam, versus something like Iran.
All right.
I think somewhere in between, we had the feeling when we talk with people there that they are very much into not Turkey, but they like, for instance, Emirates or Qatar. Qatar, of course, is very present. So, you know, like a Western society where Islam is very present, but where accepted by the whole world, you know. But of course, I'd say that human rights would be less respected than in Turkey, where they're not that much, but it's better than the Gulf area usually.
We're going to pick up also on the point that you made about the sort of competing benefactors to the Libyans and to really the Arab Spring. Following Cameron and Sarkozy into Tripoli was Turkey's prime minister this Friday, whose moment of glory, you might say, came Wednesday. Recep Tayyip Erdogan getting what was described as a rock star welcome in Egypt, talking like the standard bearer of the Arab Spring, saying the Syrian people do not believe in Assad, nor do I, but also hitting out at Egypt's neighbor to the right.
There are some countries in our region that will not be able to read and see the changes that are taking place here. First among those is Israel. There is no doubt that we will not stay silent when faced with the obstruction of stability in the region. And I believe that standing hand in hand, we can establish peace in the region.
Tough talk. Is it just rhetoric? We'll find out when the World This Week continues.
Every day, 7 women in Europe are killed by their husbands. In Spain, they've been waging war on domestic violence.